It's a cool morning in the city of Rome as you make your way down a narrow lane. Coming towards you is a large procession. You see priests and other church leaders pass by you in brightly colored robes, and then you see him, the Pope, God's chosen representative on earth. People press in because they want a blessing for their homes. They want a prayer for their kids to be safe. They want God's help to feel close. In their eyes, the Pope isn't just a manager with a title. He is the public face of the Church of Christ. He speaks for Rome. He speaks for Jesus. He represents order and holiness in a world that often feels chaotic. The Pope rides by on horseback. He looks calm. He looks practiced. He looks like a man who has done this all before. As he passes, something shifts under his robe. There, low against his stomach, hidden under layers of cloth, appears to be some sort of bump. The Pope suddenly grabs his stomach. He appears to be sick, but he's not faint. It's not a fever of some kind. It's labor pains. Then the one thing that nobody imagined could happen happens right in the middle of the open street. If you're close, you see the guards rush in and the accompanying priests and clerics freeze. If you're further back, all you see is the crowd reacting to something very strange. You know something is wrong. People shout because they can't make sense of what they just saw. They just watched the Pope give birth in public. That's shocking, not the least, because the Pope is supposed to be an adult man. The chosen representative of Christ to all the world. He is the church's highest leader. He stands for dignity and control, not a private medical crisis in the street. But again, this isn't just any medical crisis. Seeing the vicar of Christ give birth to a baby flips the whole image of the Pope and the church upside down. So what are we to think of this event? Some people will tell you that this never happened. They'll say it's just a story. Still, the legend shows up in medieval chronicles centuries later, and people later claimed certain customs around the papacy grew out of the scandal. Here's the question that keeps the story alive. If it never happened, why did so many people connected to the Catholic Church, later swear that it did? So did the Pope really give birth to a child in the middle of a Roman street? That's what we're talking about on this episode of the Parsonage Files.
Welcome to the Parsonage Files. Join Pastor Rick and his brother Rob each week as they explore the odd, funny, and mysterious stories from the world of faith and church history. Let's get started. Here is Pastor Rick.
Welcome to the Parsonage Files. My name is Rick, and I've been a United Methodist pastor for well over 20 years, and with me is my brother Rob. Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm doing better than Pope Joan.
Absolutely. Today on the Parsonage Files, we are talking about the medieval legend of Pope Joan.
I've never heard this story in my entire life.
Really?
Yeah. No, it is brand new to me. I mean, I've heard of the normal Joans, right?
Yeah.
Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
Joan Jett.
Yeah.
And Joan Collins.
And Joan of Arcadia.
And Joan of Arcadia.
Yeah.
Great show. But I've never heard this story ever. This is brand new to me.
Yeah, this is a new one for a lot of people. It isn't a legend that is brought up a lot.
Even though there was a lady pope.
Well, let's talk about that. So
where do we begin here?
All right, so our story starts off in the early 800s when a girl named Joan is born in the city of Mainz in what is now Germany. Now, some versions of the legend say that she is English or that maybe her parents were from England originally and then moved to Germany. But it doesn't really matter because the problem is all the same. And do you know what that problem is, Rob?
I'm thinking no doubt said it best. She's just a girl.
She is just a girl. And Joan, well, she wants to learn. She wants to read. She wants to write.
That's silly. She's a girl.
She's a girl. Silly, silly Joan. Girls don't read and write. And she wants to matter in the church and in political life. But the doors are shut. She wants a life that lets her study, teach, and serve, not just marry, manage a home, and most importantly, keep quiet. There's another reason for Joan's actions, and it's the oldest motivator known to mankind.
Is it love?
It is love. Usually the story says that she falls in love with a monk or a scholar, and she refuses to be left behind when he is sent. Yeah,
He's a monk. You can't fall in love with monks.
she's a woman.
But he's a monk, and monks isn't that part?
Pretending to be she's a woman who's the Pope.
But he's a monk, and monking rule number one is you don't have a girlfriend.
Well, kind of being Pope number one is you're a man.
So that didn't really bother her.
But apparently, all them rules are just going out the window.
Apparently, okay, continue.
So, are you ready for our story to continue?
Shoot. So,
is there anything else pressing that is bothering you?
I'm just trying to get the pieces. I mean, I thought the basics of poping and monking were pretty simple.
Rob, the whole point of the story is that them basic rules are going out the window.
There are no rules.
So, are you with me on this?
I am. So I'm right now. Okay.
All right.
Yes.
So, some say that the reason for Joan's actions that we're going to be seeing is because basically it's a lifetime movie. She falls in love with the guy and she refuses to be left behind when he is sent to a different monastery to study. She disguises herself as a boy.
So that she can go with him.
So she can go with him and learns in secret right next to her significant other.
You're making this up.
She's learning right next to her boo.
Aww. So
they can pass little notes next to each other as they're sitting there, copying manuscripts.
So this is like right out of John Hughes, right? A love story of folks following each other. She dresses like a dude so she can stay with the boy.
Yeah.
They go off to college, essentially.
Yes, you are correct.
Okay, just trying to wrap my mind around it.
And these facts will come up later as we talk about people's interpretation of said story. All right, so you have Joan, and for whatever reason, she has now...
Is Joan her real name? Or is...
Yes, okay. Joan, and it's important to know that Joan is the female version of the name John.
Did not know that either.
And this becomes important here in just a second because eventually Joan and either her significant other or some stories has her go by herself. She winds up in Rome where she changes her name to John Anglicus, which is John the Englishman, which would be just using the male form of her name and saying...
Tapping on where she came from.
Correct. So under that name, she becomes valuable in a busy church city like Rome because she can read, she can write, she can teach, and she can handle official work without making mistakes.
So she's got some talent.
She's got some talent. People start relying on her. Doors start opening, and John moves up in importance.
He's basically building his own dynasty.
It's the kind of career ladder we pretend always happens in large bureaucracies, but rarely does. So soon, the legend says that John stops being just a teacher and gets pulled into the papal court, the offices around the Pope.
So this is where it starts to spiral out of control for her.
Right.
Okay.
So it sounds very much like a movie.
It sounds exactly like a movie.
Right.
She dresses like a boy to stay with her man.
Yes.
She finds career success as that.
As a man.
And then it just takes off and one thing leads to another. And next thing you know, she's in a position that she can't control.
Right. Because now everybody thinks she's a man and she keeps getting promoted higher and higher. And finally, she gets pulled into the papal court where all the church's work happens. And she is writing letters for the Pope, keeping records for the Pope, being a messenger for the Pope. John works as a notary, drafting official documents. And
if he's a notary, and this is a complete question you might not know an answer to, Pastor Rick. What? If he's a notary, does he have that little stamp thing?
Yeah. It said John.
It said John. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Then the story cranks it up even more. Okay. John ends up skipping being a priest and all that good stuff and ends up being named a cardinal.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Just boom, bam.
Bam. John now finds himself a cardinal. And in case you don't know, cardinals help govern the church. They advise the Pope. They lead major regions of the church. And most importantly, they help choose the next Pope.
So things are going swimmingly if Joan was a dude.
Correct. And at that point,
and no one has been like suspicious.
Interesting. At that point, this is where we're supposed to pause and ask ourselves, how did nobody notice?
I mean, it's like no one's talking in town.
Nobody figured this out. Nobody said, you know what? That is clearly a woman dressed as a guy.
So she's got like the fake stubble? I mean, how does this work?
So this is like a bad 80s movie.
It really is a bad day. Like John Hughes is calling and wants his movie back.
Yeah, you know.
But there's a lot of man things that are hard to replicate, like beards. Are there very many clean-shaven dudes?
I'm going to guess that the guys in, I have no idea.
So this is slowly spiraling out of control for her.
Right. So things are now, again, this is why this sounds like a movie. Right. Things are starting to spiral out of control. What was just somebody who is disguising themselves in order to better themselves, to learn, or even just to
She was
be
following a dude originally, right?
With a guy. Well, some versions of the story say she was following a guy. Most say she was following a guy, but some say she was just doing it to better herself. Because she liked
either way, she showed capacity.
Either way,
her own ability got her to where she was.
Correct. But now it's gotten out of control. And now she has been named a cardinal.
So this is about the 2-hour part of the 2 hours
Correct.
into a movie where things are out of control.
Well, now things are totally going to go off the rail for John/Joan.
Okay.
All right. Pope Leo IV dies.
Okay.
And Rome needs a new pope.
And guess who they're looking at?
In the legend, the decision happens pretty quick. The other cardinals look around, they see the sharpest mind in the room, and they choose him without a fight. No shouting, no rivals, just a nice, quick, unanimous vote. John Anglicus is going to be our next pope. Which, again, is why some people say this can't possibly be true.
Because they didn't argue over it?
Nobody argued about it. And John Anglicus is named pope.
And so now the saddest person in Rome is Joan. She's like, what do I do now?
Now, some versions say that she takes the name Pope John VIII, which is one reason the legend gets tangled up with real history, because there was a real Pope, John VIII, later on. So the story ends up sharing a name with an actual pope. For a while, the tale says it works. John blesses crowds, he leads the church, and he keeps the disguise intact. Some tellings even give a precise reign length: 2 years, 7 months, and 4 days. And by all accounts, John does a great job as pope. Then the secret catches up with her. Joan becomes pregnant. And in most versions, the father is the same lover from earlier in the story, the monk or the scholar who travels with her from Mans.
And she's hiding this pregnancy? Is that the...
Yes. She finds herself pregnant, so she decides to hide it.
Convenient for her. She's got those big robes, the big hat.
Either way,
even if she was a dude as a priest and that was completely kosher, she shouldn't be having a boyfriend or a girlfriend if you're a dude, right? As a priest or a pope.
She's a woman.
Yeah, I got that part. I got the part she's a woman.
Not being celibate is the least part of her issues.
A pregnant woman as pope, that's the least of her concerns at this moment.
When you're a woman pretending to be pope, the fact that you're dating somebody is the least.
It's not high on the list of things you're worried about.
And if we're being 100% honest, she won't be the only pope with kids.
That is a true statement.
Yeah. But here's the awkward part that the legend just sort of slides on by. And that is this: a pope, even today, is rarely alone. Even private time still has someone waiting outside the door. So could a pope be pregnant and no one know? In real life, that would be a hard thing to hide for long. The legend asks you to believe that she hides it for 9 months.
I mean, it'd be like, hey, Jack, it's a fact. They're talking in town.
That leads back to the scene the whole legend is built around. a papal procession through a packed Roman street.
Okay, wait, back it up.
Yeah.
Back up. So she's pregnant and
She's pregnant.
and so she goes to term
Correct.
and she just keeps wearing bigger and bigger robes or whatever.
Correct. She does keeps getting and when people ask, she just says, well, that the Pope's eating too well.
Fair.
Right. So the legend comes back to the fact that the Pope decides to jump up on a horse and ride horseback in a public procession.
How does she get on a horse when she's pregnant? Because you're not moving around particularly comfortable, especially in the latter days of pregnancy.
No, and this is where this gets weird now. All right.
This is where it gets weird.
This is where it gets weird. The problem is that most pregnant women don't decide to go horseback riding.
Not
before they give birth.
in the final quarter. Yeah.
And another big issue is that for the most part, popes didn't ride horseback.
They get carried around on like a litter thing?
Yeah, they were carried around on a litter. Or if they're traveling a very far away, that they would have ridden in some sort of fancy carriage, but they certainly wouldn't have just hopped up on the back of a horse.
Like a commoner.
Right, exactly. So that's why this story seems a little odd. Why Pope Joan would have decided that this would be a good time to go horseback riding, knowing that she is very, very pregnant.
But if the story is true, she has made a series of poor choices, so it would just be one in a line.
But I think there's some even more simpler questions we need to ask ourselves about this story.
And those would be?
Well, who wrote it down? The most famous version puts Joan in the 850s.
Okay.
But the first clear written accounts didn't show up until the 1200s.
So it's like 400 years.
Correct. And, that's
basically
that
like
time gap, it matters. Because if something this public happened in Rome,
no one thought it was interesting to write for 400 years?
You would expect someone closer to that moment to at least mention it, especially people who lived in Rome.
Let me be the devil's advocate. Maybe because the only people that could read and write at the time were clergy, they suppressed it. Much like aliens in the government today, the government just suppresses things.
Well, this is an interesting point because the first people to actually write about it are clergy people.
Oh.
The earliest writer that we can actually name is a Dominican friar named Jean de Mali. Dominicans were members of a Catholic preaching order, and their job was to teach and preach and to train others. So they wrote down a lot of stories that they could work into a sermon. And around middle of the 1200s, Jean includes a short story in his Chronicle of the City of Metz. He places an unnamed female pope in a different spot on the timeline, but the plot is the same. A woman passes as a man, rises up through the church, gives birth in public, and the crowd turns on her.
Wait, back it up. Did we miss the part of what happens after she gives birth? The crowd turns on her?
Oh, yeah. No, I forgot you're right. It's the brutal conclusion to the tale. All right. So, according to legend, after Joan has the baby,
while riding the horse,
things go kind of, south for her. Joan was discovered to be a woman. There are several different versions of the tale. Some say that she died immediately from childbirth. The most common explanation of what happened to her is mob violence, that she was stoned to death.
So wait. So she's riding through the crowd. Everyone's, hey, greatest pope ever. She has a baby, reveals that she's a woman. The crowd turns and stones her to death,
or she fell off the horse and gave birth there in the street. But either way, she
gives birth in front of everybody.
People were so outraged that she was a woman pretending to be a guy to be the Pope that they either stoned her to death or they drug her behind a horse and then stoned her.
Either way, the end is the same.
But there's even the version where she was deposed and forced to do penance and sent off to a monastery to live with the nuns. And her son...
Lesson learned.
Yeah, lesson learned. Her son grew up in the church, being raised by monks, and ended up becoming a bishop. Most versions indicate she and her newborn child were killed instantly on the street. She was reputedly buried on the spot, and a shrine is sometimes mentioned, located right there in the middle of the street.
Is there a shrine there now?
We'll get to that in a second. Following her death, the legend states her name was erased from the official Vatican archives and she was expunged from the list of popes. And then, to prevent another female pope, the story claims future popes were required to sit on a chair with a hole in it.
Is that the chair that's at the Vatican Museum?
Yes, known as this is going to be bad with my Latin, the dung chair, for a physical, tactile inspection of their gender by a junior cardinal.
Man, that guy's hating his job.
Which I'm thinking just sounds like hazing.
It is hazing, yeah.
All right. And that is why church processions were said to have altered their route to avoid that street where she gave birth. That is the story of Pope Joan.
So they have so wait a second, Pastor Rick. We have a list of popes, right? What happens if you line that up with the story? Does it match?
No. Leo the Fourth dies on July 17th, 855. After his death, Benedict III is elected as Pope. So, how about the proofs that are supposedly in Rome? One claim is about a street in Rome. Writers say papal processions avoid the spot where the birth happened, but here's the problem. Procession routes change for lots of reasons.
The city changes.
Yeah, for instance, a lot of the streets in Rome are really narrow. Roads sometimes get blocked by constructions. Politics change. Tradition grows. So even if a route was avoided, that doesn't prove that a birth happened. Then there is the most famous proof, which is the chair. So you may have heard about a throne with a hole in the seat and a rumor that officials check a new pope's body to make sure that he's male. With some writers saying that a junior cardinal has to stick his hand up there to make sure that the he pope is a he pope, and they connect this
that job would suck.
To Pope Joan, right? But here's the thing, right?
Is that not a thing?
Yeah, there were old Roman chairs used in ceremonies, and some of them had holes because they were made for a very practical use in an earlier life. So yes, a quote pierced chair exists. And
it's a real thing.
Odd chairs do show up in real ceremonial life, but that still does not prove that anyone was checking anyone.
So what you're saying is when we got the new pope a few years ago, there wasn't some poor junior cardinal that had to go do something inappropriate.
And according to the Vatican, no, the pope is not checked.
According to the Vatican, they're like, ew! That's not a thing.
Yeah, that's not a thing. So that is the story of one Pope Joan. I heard that story, or
Where'd you hear that story at?
Well, it's been a movie. They made several movies about it.
Wait, there's a movie about this and I didn't even know?
I want to say, wasn't there a miniseries or something?
Really?
Yeah, Pope Joan.
I didn't. I mean, literally until you mentioned it an hour ago, I've never heard of this. Never heard of this in my life.
Yep. It's the story of the one and only female pope. All right, Rob, what else do you have?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. And again, if you are looking for a church home, we would love to have you at Groveport United Methodist Church. You can worship with us at 10:30 a.m. every Sunday, online or in person. Have a great week. Until next time, take care.
Have a good one, everyone.